Hey guys, James MC Reviews here. Welcome to what's probably going to end up being the final Ketchup review of 2023, covering all the movies I saw in November. Pain Hustlers is a new Netflix movie with Emily Blunt and Chris Evans and is about a pharmaceutical company peddling a new pain medication for cancer patients that ends up doing more harm than good. It was an interesting premise that is actually based on true events, and it had some solid performances, but overall it was just kind of mid. It's the same corporate group scams people and then gets caught capitalist deconstruction story we've seen a lot as of recent. It went on a bit long, it didn't really do anything interesting filmmaking wise. Overall, it was just kind of 2.5 out of 5. Next Goal Wins is directed by Taika Waititi and is about a disgruntled soccer coach who is sent off to coach the worst team in history, American Samoa. AMC used this as part of a new experiment called Screen Unseen, where they showed an early screening of a mystery movie and the only clues to what it was were the rating and the runtime. A lot of people, myself included, suspected it might be Captain Marvel. And apparently, when certain audiences found out what it was, a lot of people walked out. Which is kind of a shame, because the movie was pretty decent. Okay, it's nothing you haven't seen before. In fact, we literally got a movie like this 8 months ago. But it was fun, it had a good sense of humor, Fassbender was pretty good. It's just a solid feel-good movie. 3.5 out of 5. Freelance stars John Cena and Alison Brie, and is essentially The Lost City, but worse. I already didn't have the highest expectations when I saw this was one of the lowest rated movies of the year on Letterboxd, and it was somehow worse than I expected. The actors are blatantly just collecting a paycheck, they have zero chemistry together, the humor is non-existent, the story is cliche, the action is dull. I was just waiting for this to be over the whole time. 1.5 out of 5. Priscilla is directed by Sofia Coppola and is being cited as the antithesis of Baz Luhrmann's Elvis from last year. Whereas that movie was flashy and in your face, this movie is a lot more grounded and downplayed. I was actually one of the few enjoyers of Elvis. It wasn't perfect, but I had a good time with it. This is definitely the better movie, though. It's really harsh in its depiction of Elvis and Priscilla's relationship with him. It takes its time in showing the chaos that was their time together. And that's something I realized thinking about the Elvis movie after coming out of this. I don't even remember how much of Priscilla was in the movie, which I guess speaks to how insignificant she was in the grand scheme of his life. The acting across the board was great, the production design was solid, the directing was well done, definitely an awards contender for sure. 3.5 out of 5. Journey to Bethlehem stars Fiona Palamo and the guy from Zombies as Mary and Joseph, and is a modern pop musical retelling of the Nativity, and it is just as ridiculous as it sounds. When the trailer for this first came out, my first thought was, this looks like a glorious train wreck and I have to see it in theaters. And after sitting through it, I wasn't 100% wrong in that mindset. As religious films go, it's fine. It wasn't horribly offensive or overly preachy. It was just a Bible story as told by way of high school musical. You can tell this is a first-time director because the musical sequences are very clunkily paced and edited. The musical numbers were all pretty bland and forgettable, and the singing was all dreadfully auto-tuned. The actors were all pretty wooden, with the exception of Antonio Banderas as King Herod, who is scenery chewing like a motherfucker. And seriously, I hate this trend that Sound of Freedom started, where these studios are having to beg for their audience to donate tickets to help artificially increase the film's box office. Maybe if that money was going to a charity organization, then it'd be a different story, but I'm gonna take a wild guess and say that's not the case. Ultimately, I know this movie is not made for me, and it's really stupid and poorly made, but I actually had fun watching it. 2 out of 5. Trolls Band Together is the third installment in the Trolls franchise. If you haven't seen the video my girlfriend and I did, she hated the first one while I found it mildly annoying. We both agreed the second one was much better, and when we got out of this movie, we both agreed it was probably the best in the series. Obviously, that's not to say it's perfect, and there are still some aspects that were kind of annoying, but this would probably be the most watchable of the 3 Trolls films. The animation is very vibrant, and the use of different textures to make this world feel handcrafted was very cool looking. They do a lot of experimentation, particularly with the obligatory acid trip sequence. The theme of family and the development of the characters was a bit rushed, but welcome. There were a few genuinely good laughs I got out of this. I did like how the story with the villains is that they have no musical talent, so they have to steal talent from the trolls, which is made all the funnier when you realize that one of them is voiced by Amy Schumer. Ultimately, this movie is not going to win any awards, but it was a fun time. 3 out of 5. Dream Scenario stars Nicolas Cage as the most unremarkable man on the planet who suddenly garners a lot of attention when he starts randomly showing up in people's dreams. I was sold on this movie from the trailer, and it did not disappoint. I love the ridiculousness of the concept and how it manages to touch on different issues like the price of fame, cancel culture, etc. The movie starts off really weird and funny, but slowly but surely gets kind of sad as this guy's life starts crumbling around him. And Cage is really good in this. Seeing just this average guy kind of fall victim to his own fame makes what happens by the end all the more heartbreaking. The film was well shot, it balanced the humor and the drama seamlessly, the acting across the board was great. Overall, it was a really fun sit. 4 out of 5. The Hunger Games, Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, is the Hunger Games prequel that explains how a young Tom Blythe will grow up into Donald Sutherland. I honestly didn't have many expectations going into this movie. Not only has it been 8 years since the last Hunger Games movie, so it felt like this was coming in way too late, but it also felt kind of weird that the movie is trying to get us to sympathize with a ruthless dictator in President Snow. Well, I watched it, and for the first 2 acts, I was surprised at how much I was invested. I really liked seeing the early stages of the games and how Snow is trying to suggest all these ways to get people to care about them again. I liked the production design and how, even with it being set in this futuristic, post-apocalyptic world, a lot of the technology is still very analog. The acting across the board was really solid, with Viola Davis being a huge standout. And I liked the early development of Snow and how he begrudgingly accepts the task of mentoring this girl from District 12, only to start growing closer to her and breaking every rule in the book to get her to win. When we got to the 3rd act, that's when it kind of killed it for me. I don't know how it is in the book, but it felt like by the end they forgot, oh shit, this guy's supposed to be the bad guy. So the turn he takes by the end comes out of nowhere and feels very rushed. I also didn't really buy the relationship between Snow and Lucy Gray. It seemed kind of forced and they don't have the best chemistry. I know the Hunger Games came out in a time where they would split the final part of a trilogy into 2 movies and that would anger a lot of people, but I feel like this is one of the few exceptions to where it would benefit from being a 2-parter. It would allow the story to breathe and for them to expand on the characters and make their descent from sympathetic to evil feel more natural. As it is, the movie was alright. 3 out of 5. Thanksgiving is the newest film by Eli Roth and follows a group of people in Plymouth, Massachusetts being picked off by a serial killer in a pilgrim outfit. I had a lot of fun with this movie. It's definitely got a lot of problems and it's no masterpiece, but it feels like it's aiming to be a new holiday classic, and I think it earns that title. The commentary it does on the chaos and soulless corporate greed that comes with Thanksgiving, and more specifically Black Friday, is effective without being too heavy-handed. The kills are super creative and brutal to watch. The characters are likable enough to get you to care when something happens to them. And it's overall just a really entertaining time. 3.5 out of 5. The Holdover stars Paul Giamatti as an old curmudgeon history teacher at a boarding school who gets tasked with looking after the students who are left behind over winter break. And there's no other word for it. This movie is absolutely fucking wonderful. It has so much charm and warmth, it's infectious. It recaptures the look and feel of an 80s coming-of-age movie pretty flawlessly. It's like if in The Breakfast Club, the principal and the students actually connected with each other. It balances out the humor with some genuinely heart-tugging moments between the characters. There was a moment towards the end where I could feel myself getting choked up. The acting across the board is fantastic. Paul Giamatti is amazing and has a legit emotional arc across the movie. The guy playing Angus, Dominic Sessa, was great too, and I was surprised to see that this was his first movie. Also, I don't know if it's the way he looks or the attitude he has in this movie, but why do I want to see this guy as Harry Osborn? Is that just me? The look of the film captures that shot-on-film look of these types of movies really well, but even beyond that, the production design looks so warm and cozy and inviting. This makes for a really great holiday movie. I honestly don't have much else to say. This is easily one of the best movies of the year, and a really strong awards contender. Please check this out before it leaves theaters. 4.5 out of 5. The Killer is directed by David Fincher and stars Michael Fassbender as the most clinical, strategic hitman in the world. After a near miss causes people to go after someone he's close to, he makes his way up the totem pole of people who are involved to try and get answers. This movie was good, but it definitely wasn't what I was expecting. Usually when you think of Hitman movies, you think of big, over-the-top thrill rides with explosive action scenes and gunfights. This flips it on its head and is a lot more slow and methodical and tense. That might not be for everyone, but I thought it worked for the story and character. We see this guy as very disciplined, who lives by a very cold, unfeeling mantra. But when this mishap happens, he kind of steps into uncharted territory and starts to get a bit sloppier. Fassbender is really good, the concept was interesting. It did feel a bit slow, which is kind of the tone working against it, but I still think it did a good job at what it was trying to do. I'd say check it out if you're curious. 3.5 out of 5. Wish is the newest film from Disney Animation, commemorating 100 years of the studio. And going in, my expectations were not the highest. The trailers did nothing for me, the animation style looked weird, and everything about it just looked very generic. After coming out of it, this is top 10 worst of the year material. This movie was infuriating, not just because of how nothing it was, but because it had potential to actually be something. The idea of a power-hungry tyrant holding people's wishes because he fears what they could inspire could be really clever and offer some self-defacing commentary on the company itself, honoring a lot of its strengths but acknowledging a lot of its faults. But this movie doesn't want to be clever. It just wants to be a bare-bones AI-generated movie with a bunch of toothless callbacks that do nothing except remind you of all the classic Disney movies you should be watching. Literally, from the moment this starts, you can tell every single beat the story is going to hit, and it does nothing new or interesting. The songs are all super derivative and pointless. The characters are all extremely bland and one note. The comedy is obnoxious and surprisingly immature. Alan Tudyk is essentially just doing Clayface from the Harley Quinn show, but with more butt jokes. The most annoying part is, once all the frustration subsides, I am never going to remember a single fucking thing about this movie. It is just that much of a forgettable blip. The only semi-positive thing I can give this are, 1, the animation didn't look nearly as horrendous as I thought. While what they were trying to convey would have looked much better and fit theming if they just did traditional 2D animation, it still looked unique and the backgrounds looked pretty and colorful. 2, Chris Pine is pretty solid as the villain. Don't get me wrong, he's still very one note and the only thing to his character is being evil, but he was hamming it up pretty well, and at least it didn't do the whole broken pedestal twist villain thing that Frozen made so popular. But beyond those two things, this movie was a lukewarm can of nothing. As a typical animated movie, it's just kinda eh, but as a 100-year celebration for a studio that has put so much magic and creativity and fun into the world, it's kind of an insult. If you have little kids and you're looking for a movie to take them to, it's not like there's anything super offensive in this that they shouldn't see, but you'd get just as much, if not more, out of showing them one of the classic Disney movies that are actually good. And if you're a longtime Disney fan looking for a fun, respectful, emotionally resonant 100 Years tribute, just watch Once Upon a Studio instead. Which, by the way, they didn't play this in front of the movie, and I was so disappointed. Like, that's what that short was made for, and you just... Ugh. Whatever. Anyway, movie was bad, 1.5 out of 5. And that does it for this video. Let me know in the comments what you've been watching this month. Check out my other videos and look forward to more stuff coming real soon.